Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, reporting live from my little cabin in the woods called Murphy's Law here in East Texas. But we've got some wonderful guests tonight. First of all, we have our featured author, Gregory Erich Phillips, who's from Seattle, Washington. And we also have with us from Chicago, Illinois, Ruthie Landis, my dear Broadway and actor friend that this is the perfect trifecta of having all three of us together. But I just want, before I let Gregory talk, I want to talk about his wonderful book, A Season of Lights. It's a novel in 3 acts, and it's a story of 2 people who go to New York City. Tom is an older piano player, and then Cammie has just come into the picture, and it's a story about them. What makes this book so interesting for all the audience is this is the first book that I have seen that discusses both, because it covers these time periods, the AIDS epidemic that happened within the arts and theater district of New York City, and also COVID. And oh my gosh, we're in the throes of it still. And I never thought this would ever happen by the time you came on board with this. But this is a wonderful book. And I'm going to read to you a quote that I actually, as I was scamming through this again to kind of refresh myself, I found this wonderful quote from my dear friend and pulpit queen, Julie Cantrell. And she says, no matter what happens in life, the show must go on, especially for those who dare to dream. And Gregory's a dreamer. He's written wonderful books. I grabbed his other book, The Exile. If you haven't read this novel, it won first place for the mainstream fiction award in the PNWA literary contest, and very excited about this book, and I can't wait for more. So I'm going to let you talk for a little bit about yourself, and please go into detail about your dance background, because I have a sad story, because uh, um, Gregory was going to teach me how to tango at our last live girlfriend weekend. And alas, COVID hit, so I was teasingly telling him before the show that I hope it happens soon, because I certainly don't want to do it on a walker. So without any more talking from me, Gregory Erich Phillips. Let's hear about what's going on in your life, Gregory.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you Pulpwood Queens once again. And A Season of Lights, you asked me to say how it came together, and it was really an interesting process. As Kathy mentioned, I'm a dancer. I've danced in some stage shows, both on the West Coast where I live and also in New York City. I lived there for about 1.5 years, danced in a few off-Broadway shows. And those experiences, just being in the theater world, both in New York and on the West Coast, really inspired the novel and inspired many of the little stories and anecdotes, especially backstage with these characters that kind of made this novel into what it was. So after I moved back to Seattle from New York, about 2 years later is when I started the novel. So it's actually taken quite a while for the whole thing to come together. I wrote the first really kind of what became Act 1 back then. And Act 1 really just focuses on one weekend, one show, and all the characters and their, do all of the little nuances that go into that show. Then I ended up putting the book aside for a while. It just wasn't quite where it needed to be. I took a couple years away from it, in which time I wrote The Exile. And then after The Exile was done, I came back to it, finished the novel.
That's a big deal.
And actually, tried a little bit to get it published. And I'm really glad that first attempt failed. That was in 2019. Then in March of 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, I saw so many close friends and you know, artistic comrades who were affected by the pandemic, by the quarantine, the shutdown of Broadway, the shutdown of the theater arts here in Seattle. You know, I have friends whose entire livelihoods have gone away. Fortunately, although I've been a performing artist for many years, it's never been my primary income. But for many close friends, it is. And I watched, you know, careers end because of this. And so I thought, this is something that I want to portray in fiction, because that's what I like to use my art form for, is to show, not just to tell a good story, but to, you know, make people think and see things about the world that they might not have considered. And it just hit me one day in early March of last year. I have this fully formed novel about artists working off Broadway. This is what this book needed. And so then I wrote what became Act 3. And I literally wrote the events of the novel as it was happening in real life. It takes place in March of 2020. I was writing it in March of 2020. And as Kathy mentioned, this is, as far as I know, the first novel to come to market that deals with the COVID pandemic. And the reason that I was able to do that was because the novel was, you know, mostly completed. And it's very interesting for me to look back on it now at what I was writing, when none of us knew how this was going to play out, nor did the characters. And so I felt like that gave it some real authenticity, to capture that moment in time right at the start of what's still happening.
Yeah. Who would have ever known that? I remember when I canceled Girlfriend Weekend from being a live event, everybody goes, "Oh no, it will be by January, we'll be back and open again." And I knew, I just had this gut feeling that it was not going to happen. And, you know, that was my first virtual event and it went fabulous. But I also knew that this year it would not be, you know, so I don't know what's going to happen in 2023. I think people need to understand that unless we get really serious about taking all the precautions to make this go away, it's not going to go away. So thank you for writing this story. Thank you. And there is nothing I love more. I know Ruthie's the same way as me. Nothing that we love more than going to a Broadway play, a ballet, a musical, any live performance piece. In fact, the last time I went to New York, actually, the time before, it wasn't the last time, the time before, we went to I think we went to 3 plays and 2 musicals with the Pulpit Queens. So we went to the Strand and the, you know, the New York Public Library and Book Expo as power readers. We did a whole literary tour of New York, and we even had authors take us to their homes and have parties for us. It was fabulous. I'm ready to go back. How about you?
Absolutely.
Now Broadway is open back up. And I know that everybody has to show their vaccination card when they go to a restaurant, a theater, or whatever. Do you know if they're social distancing in those theaters at all?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I've been watching Hugh Jackman because he's been posting a lot of stuff. He's a great person to keep me up with everything going on in New York. And, what was the last time you were in New York?
Um, 2017. So
Okay.
I'm definitely due to go back as well.
Yeah, we all are. Maybe we can take another International Public Queen and Timber Guy, book club trip to
Yeah,
New York City. Maybe we could do a walking tour of your book. Wouldn't that be
yeah,
cool?
that would be fun.
That would be really a lot of fun. I'm thinking I want to go right now because I've been stuck in this cabin for so long. I have cabin fever. Thank goodness my daughter just walked in because having her around makes it not so isolated. But we are thrilled about your book. And so from start to finish, it took how long do you think?
Well, I mean, really 5 years from start to finish, but it wasn't, you know, I started, finished, and published an entire other book in that time. So it wasn't constant
I
work.
think that's important to tell people this because a lot of people think you write a book, you publish it, you write a book,
Yeah.
and sometimes that doesn't happen. I often think
Yeah,
of
they're all
Wingate, before we were yours, broke the glass ceiling and sold millions of copies. And so her first book they brought back out.
mhm.
Books don't necessarily get published in exactly the order that you think. Usually when an author
Oh,
becomes really
exactly.
famous, they'll bring back, some works that have never been done. And I love to see an author's full body of work because you can see how they've grown as an author, but your stories are all standalones, and that's important too. There's so many series out there, but wouldn't this be a great Netflix series? Every book that I read, I see visually. I had, you're not exactly the character, but I always picture you in your own books. I don't know why. Maybe it's because you're so handsome. But was it, who were the characters, kind of based upon? Did you have somebody in mind when you did Cammy and Tom?
Great question. And, you know, I never base characters in my novels off of a particular person, but they all bring in traits that I've observed in the world. So, Cammy's experiences as a performer bear some similarities to my own in terms of her time in New York, her successes, and sometimes coming up short. A lot of that is, I wouldn't say based on my own experiences, but there's some similarities.
Right.
However, I think that Cami as a person, her personality and her personal struggles are very unlike me. So that I wouldn't say that I fully put myself into her.
Right.
Uh, a lot of the other characters are, especially some of the minor characters, are people that you often meet in the theater world.
Mhm.
And I wanted to portray these personalities that I've encountered time and again. And so none of these people are based off of a particular person I've met, but they're typical people that you'd meet in the theater world.
Right. You know,
And
yeah.
Tom, there's really no parallel that I can think of to Tom. He was a fairly unique character for for me, but I really like the way he came about. He's one of my favorite characters I've created.
When you were writing the book, did Tom, you visualized him in your imagination, but as you were writing him, did he kind of take over and maybe become a voice that you, I hear authors say this all the time, that as they're writing a character, at some point you think you're going one direction, and then all of a sudden the character does something totally different and they write that story. Did you have that happen at all to you?
It actually happened more with Cammy than Tom.
Really? That's
Yes.
fascinating. That's
Yeah. How Cammy changes, particularly in Act Two, with her interactions with her family and her own personal struggles, that was not all planned. That just started to sort of happen as I journeyed with Cammy through this story.
that's interesting. The writing process is so individual for each author, but I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm finding out that there's a lot of things that become similar amongst authors, no matter what genre, whether they're male or female, whatever they um, are choosing to write under. But they you you often think that authors know exactly what's going to happen when they're writing the story. You know, they think people think you're going to outline, you're going to put this in place, and then just. But I'm finding I have had many times people say, "Well, what did you think about when Bob went to the store and did that thing? And what were you trying to say there?" And I'll look at the author, just face go blank, and go, I wasn't really thinking anything. Bob just went to the store. And it just always cracks me up because people almost perceive their own interpretations of your book, much the way
Mhm.
they do art. You
Yeah.
know, I painted a picture the other day and I had one of my friends email me and say, "Do you see the two men in the boulders?" Like, I don't see any men in the boulders, or there's an angel in that one. And I'm just going, okay, you know, I'm happy that you see that. I'm pleased because I think we write our own interpretations. That's why it's so great to
Well,
all come together and have these discussions with the author, because
mhm.
then we find out the full picture.
And also, as an author, I like to allow room for the reader's imagination to come up with those things, because I don't necessarily always have all the answers myself of what happened. I won't give away the ending, but for those of you who have read it, there are some things about the ending that are left a little bit vague as to what might have happened to this or that character. And people have asked me, well, what happened?
You
And
tell me, right?
I don't know. I don't know. That's the point. You can imagine. I think the allowing the reader's imagination to fill in some gaps is something that a successful novel should always do.
Is there anything in your novel that you have written that nobody's asked you about and you just can't figure out why? Because
Hmm.
everybody, when I wrote my memoir, nobody mentioned a word to me about my mother, who was very instrumental in my life. Not one word. And I thought, that is so strange because to me, she was just such a big influence on my life and nobody mentioned it. Did you have anything like that happen?
Not really. It's the questions that people have asked and the comments that people have made have been, uh, I think, have hit most of the major things I was trying to accomplish in the novel.
Hmm. Yeah. And have you done a signing in New York or virtually anything yet?
No,
Okay, we'll have to do that when we go on our Pulp and Queen trip.
exactly. Yes,
We're going to
yes.
get you a book signing. Last time I set it up, so 6 of our Pulp and Queen authors, we were down on Central Park West at Barnes
Hmm.
and Noble. We did a big event, so we will get that happening. I promise you.
Well,
Uh, I'm
anytime.
going to
I'm
come.
always willing to jump on a plane to New York.
Yeah, and we're the thing about a book, especially one such as yours, and especially one that is nobody, I hope everybody's watching this because I share it on LinkedIn and Pinterest and Facebook, all the social media. This is the perfect book to read for your book club right now while we're all stuck at home social distancing, because we need to have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
And the arts, being someone who's trying to support myself as an artist, I've never been happier in my life because I have all the time in the world to work on all my passions, but I've never been so broke. I mean, I'm a trooper. I'm like, the show must go on. I'm going to be schlepping books when they open the gates and let me out. But a lot of people give up. I mean, they really do. And then they've got to go back home to Pennsylvania or wherever they came from, Iowa, and with their tails between their legs. But we didn't know this was going to happen. How many friends have you had that have been affected by this? A
Oh,
lot.
dozens.
Yeah.
Yeah, dozens. Both in New York City, I'm still in touch with a lot of the people that I've known and performed with there, and here in Seattle, also in San Francisco, where I've performed some. It's anybody who has been in the performing arts. This has affected them. I mean, it's affected me, even though that's not been my livelihood, but it's been my passion for many years, and not being able to do that has been emotionally difficult for me, if not, not for me a financial burden, but the emotional part of it is huge, because it's a part of your identity when you're, in my case, when you're a dancer and we're used to doing this, and you can't for a year and a half and counting. uh, it's come back in some small doses here in Seattle, because the virus has been pretty well under control here, but it's still very limited. And yeah, it just I can't even count how many people I know who it's affected.
I mean, and the dancing. I mean, just the dancing in itself. You were always sharing, places that you were performing for the tango, and it was so much fun to share it with the Polka Queens. But none of that has been able to happen either,
No.
has it? No, that's. I wonder about. I've been watching the kind of the trials and tribulations of the Olympics, and
Mhm.
all these dance competitions, and all these things that young people and people in the arts or sports not being able to do that is just really kind of crippled our generation right now. It's in some ways, it's 9/11 was horrible. I mean, what I'll never forget it as long as I live. But this is it affected all those people in New York City, and then family members across the country. But this is literally affecting every human being on the planet. And so we'll see. This wasn't written to be a series, was it?
Oh no.
No.
I've I mean, you've read all three of my novels. I don't think of stories that way as a series. I think of them as a
I do too.
standalone thing.
And I know people love series. Now, I love to binge watch, but I rather binge watch this made into a series than,
Yes.
you know, I mean, when I was a kid, I read all the Nancy Drews and the Little House on the Prairies and all those, and I just couldn't get them fast enough. But I like
Yeah,
standalone.
it's a different genre.
Yeah,
I think the series lends themselves well to something where you can have a character who goes through a series of adventures. Like Nancy Drew, they're all a little bit of a mystery. Little House on the Prairie, it's always a new thing that the family's at least going through. Whereas with my novels, I kind of like to tell, even though they maybe only take a year or so of time, to sort of tell a life story of a character. And so with my three novels, it's I don't think it lends itself to taking that same character and writing an additional story. People on my first novel, Love of Finished Years, everybody loved the character of Elsa.
I
And
know.
everybody said, well, I want more of Elsa, so you should write a sequel. And my answer was, I put Elsa through a lot in that novel. I don't want to put her through anything else. And if I don't put her through anything, then the sequel would be boring. So, you
Well,
know,
then you put a really high expectation on if the second book isn't as great as the first book.
exactly that too.
Sometimes I've noticed a lot of times they're better,
Mhm.
but it does put a lot more pressure on an author as rather starting with a clean palette
Yeah.
and so this book is out. We're all dealing with COVID. Have you even had an opportunity to even think about working on another book or?
Well, I've thought about it. There's some projects that I've been working a little bit on. Honestly, it's been, even though I have more spare time now than I've ever had, it's been hard to write in COVID during COVID. It's just been hard to find the inspiration, find the motivation, because yeah, because everything is so uncertain. But
I hear
there's
that.
still some books that are percolating and
Well, in
inside
the
me. So
meantime, Mandy Haynes, our executive director, is putting together an anthology of our authors to kind of keep you out in the world while we're all dealing with this. And it's called Work in Progress. And it can be a past work, it can be an excerpt from your book just to kind of be a tease. Uh, didn't you do one, Ruthie? Have you turned one in yet? Yeah.
no.
No, no, you have not.
Oh, sorry. No, I
I
haven't.
No,
I
no.
haven't yet. I'm debating between two pieces and then I'll get it in.
I know. I haven't got mine in, and we've got till October to get them in because we're going to have it come out before 2022 Girlfriend Weekend. And it's going to be a way of really, it's kind of a way of advertising our body of authors. We're always trying to dream up new ways to help promote you guys. And it's hard because everybody in the world is emailing me, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And you want to help everybody, but I got to sleep too. And I lay awake at night just thinking, what can I do? And Mandy came up with this idea, and I go, that's brilliant. She's got the cover. She's got, I think, over 300 pages. And I go, well, how big is this book going to be? And she goes, well, the thing about a short story collection is it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because you can pick it up and put it down in time. I go, well, you're right. So, and when we get back out, I've got to get back out with my other anthology that came out during COVID, which I'm just like y'all. It did not do as well as we assumed it would do, but that's okay because when I get out there, everybody's going to know about it. And so, as you are thinking about these ideas and everything, do you have any advice to new authors that are thinking about? To me, this is the perfect opportunity to say, I've always wanted to write a book. I mean, we started a writers club specifically for that because people go, I don't know how to do it. And I said, well, you know what? Let's just get our authors to do a program, to share different aspects of writing. And that's what we've been doing. So maybe you
The
might.
first piece of advice I always give to people who want to write novels in particular
Uh-huh.
is the reason I'm assuming, but the reason that you want to write a novel is because you have a story to tell. And if you didn't, you wouldn't have that desire. So if you have a story to tell, just tell it and don't think too hard about it. Don't worry about, oh, I don't have great grammar, I don't have great writing craft. Those things can be learned. But tell your story, put it on paper. You can polish it later. You can get advice from others. So that's, I mean, it's kind of a non-specific piece of advice, but I think it's important to just, don't don't worry about when you're going to finish it or how long it's going to take. That's the worst thing you can think about when you're starting. Just tell a story, see what happens.
If you write a page a day, you have a book in a year.
Exactly. And I certainly don't write a page a day, but I may write no pages for 9 days and then 10 pages on the 10th day, because that's, to me, I write as the inspiration comes. And I find that when I try to force it, when it's not there, it's sometimes it's worth doing that to kind of get me over a hump. But usually the part that I wrote when I was trying to force it, that's going to get cut because it's not good enough. It needs to, the inspiration from me needs to be real. I can't just say, oh, I'm going to write now because it's time to write.
To me, when people say it took me 6 years to write my first book, and now it's taken way longer to get this next one. But to me, you spend that much and way more time just percolating story ideas.
Absolutely.
Because I
Yeah.
don't outline. I don't like to outline because then it puts you in that box where you feel like, you've kind of got to stick to this certain path. And to me, you lose the authenticity, and you
Yeah.
lose the, spontaneity.
Yeah.
So I
When
think
I
you're good advice.
Yeah, when I start a project and I come up with an idea, I don't outline, but I do write just in free form the idea of my story,
Right.
almost like a short story format. And but what I find is that the first section of the story is very detailed as I'm planning it. And as it gets more into what will be the middle of the novel, it becomes a little bit more vague. And I usually don't even know the ending yet. when I start.
That's funny because I actually write the ending almost first.
Hmm.
You know, I have an idea in my mind, and I find that if I get the ending and the beginning and then the middle, then it's easy to fill in that's just me. But
Yeah.
what happens when when I took it to my editor, she switched everything around. The
Hmm.
first story I had in the book, she put as the high point in the middle, and it made it a better book. It really did. So everybody has their own unique way, and everybody needs to get a good editor because it
Absolutely.
may not be um, your original thought, but I think 9 times out of 10, they've been doing this. They're seasoned professionals. They
Yeah.
know what, but if you're really adamant about something, stick to your guns
Yeah.
because I've seen people change novels and
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
And
So
yeah, that's a great point, that you have to have, as a writer, you have to have the humility to accept what an editor is going to say, because I mean, I couldn't have done any of my 3 novels without, I had fantastic editors for all 3 of them. Uh, I actually used the same editor for Season of Lights as in The Exile. So, but you, like you said, you also need to be able to stick to your guns. There was one kind of big thing about A Season of Lights that my editor suggested that I did not do, because I felt like that would,
change everything. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it would have. But there were countless other things that he gave me that allowed me to really improve the novel.
Right.
So, yeah,
You have to pick your battles.
yeah,
And it's always interesting, but you had some great books. We're just gonna, and I think a lot of times people go, well, this book only sold, 5, 10, 20,000. And I go, keep going because you can't get better at something unless you keep going. I think a lot of people quit too soon, just
yeah,
quit too soon. And not every book is going to be a bestseller. I mean, I listened to the actor Shah Rukh Khan talk all the time about his movies. He said, I did a lot of movies that were just really nobody else would take them, but I just wanted to act. And he said, so not all of them did good, but when they did good, they did really good. So
yeah,
just keep in mind that the whole purpose of the gifts and talents that we're giving is that we don't give up.
yeah,
And you can't be an opera singer if you can't stay in tune too. You can't be a dancer if you don't have good balance. There's lots of things that in a ballet dancer, I have a long second toe. I took all these ballet lessons and they said, well, you could never be a ballet dancer because you have to have certain physical attributes, which
mhm,
I did not have. So but stick to choose your battles. So
yeah.
that's what you do. Uh, Now I know you have a website. Is it Gregory Phillips or GregoryErichPhillips.com?
GregoryErichPhillips.com.
And you're also on Facebook and Instagram under Gregory Phillips.
Gregory Erich Phillips. On both.
Okay, so always use his middle name, everybody, because this
Mhm.
is being recorded and it's going to be up on our YouTube channel. And I can send you a copy of this if you've got someplace you want to post it, or you can
Yeah,
just send them to the channel. Do you want me to send you a copy? I will.
sure. Yeah.
The whole thing about
Or
our
just send me the link. That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do with our book club is be very inclusive and to also be on the same page by, you support each other. Whatever I can do to help you, whatever you can do to help me, it we all win when we read. So,
Absolutely.
and these little bookmarks that you sent, this is really great because you've got great quotes, you've got all your little um, things on there. That reminds me, I'll have to do that when my book comes out. But great cover, wonderful book. I'm very excited about really all your books. I could not find your other book. I've been redoing my bookshelves, but I've got all of them, and I thank you for that. But we do want you involved with our girlfriend weekend again, and we want everybody to know that it's going to be a week long this year, so we can have a little bit of rest in between
It's
the
probably a smart idea.
well, most of it is I need to have enough time to download and get them,
Yeah.
because doing them all at the end took me 2 weeks.
Mhm.
No way I'm going to go through that again. So we learn by doing, by putting in the work. So thank you for coming tonight. I know your life is very, very busy. And for anybody that wants to email you, can they do so?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that email is?
So the email is gregoryphillipse@gmail.com. But if you just go to my website, you
Okay.
can contact me. It's probably easier just to remember the website.
I'm going to put that in on the, when I download it, I'll put your website and that you're
Yeah.
on Instagram and Facebook. So
Mhm.
I'll put that up because we want people to be able to contact you. A lot of
I
people,
love hearing from readers.
well, a lot of people aren't like me, and they don't want to be visible, or they like to. We have more people watch them after the fact at their
Mhm.
own leisure, with around their work schedules. And we have so many book club members coming on board that aren't even in logistical time zones.
Mm.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So having it where they can watch it at their own leisure makes it so much interesting to people. So work's going great, everything going well. You feeling good?
Yep. Mhm.
We're thrilled about it. Well, thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
And as soon as we go off tonight, I will download it onto, or upload it, whatever you call it, onto my channel. That's
Mhm.
Kathy L. Murphy on YouTube. Please subscribe and please join, because if you click that little bell icon up in the corner, it'll send you a notification every time a new author interview goes on up. And I think we're way over the 170 video mark, and I just started this spring.
Wow.
I mean, I've been busy. So thanks again, and we will check back in with you later. I got you up on Breathless Bubbles and Books. In how are we going to be able to do any of those, or do you know yet?
Are we still recording?
We'll take
Yeah.
it off and then we'll talk. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. It'll be up on the YouTube channel probably this evening. I'll get it posted by tomorrow morning. I'll have it up on our Breathless Bubbles and Books. So if people want to watch it, that's our daily blog. And I'll put it up on our new group hangout. And thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Gregory. This is really great. I so appreciate our authors who are so busy taking time out to share their story with you, because everybody, it's all about the story. So I'm going to end this conversation, and it will actually take you off, but just go back right on. Okay. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you
Bye.
next time. Bye-bye.